You don't struggle with loneliness. You struggle with adaptation. Years without close friends didn't just leave an empty space in your life. They trained your nervous system to operate differently. At first, it wasn't dramatic. Maybe friendships faded after school. Maybe work consumed you. Maybe trust broke quietly one too many times. But the brain doesn't interpret social absence as neutral. It interprets it as information. And over time, your threat detection system recalibrates. When connection is inconsistent or unsafe, your nervous system learns to conserve energy. It shifts from social engagement to self-reliance. That shift feels like independence. Underneath, it's regulation. Here's what most people misunderstand. Prolonged social isolation doesn't simply create sadness. It alters attachment conditioning. Your brain's reward circuitry begins to down-regulate the dopamine response tied to social bonding. Conversations feel draining instead of energizing. Small talk feels like labor. You tell yourself you're selective. In reality, your system has optimized for predictability. This is where it gets interesting. Humans are wired for co-regulation. The vagus nerve, part of your parasympathetic system, responds to facial expression, tone, and safe eye contact. When those signals disappear for years, your baseline changes. You become emotionally self-contained. You stop expecting anyone to help regulate your stress. That sounds strong. It's also isolating. You may even notice a cognitive bias forming. When someone shows interest, your mind scans for exit points. When plans are suggested, you calculate the energy cost. When vulnerability is required, you feel friction. Not because you're incapable of intimacy, but because your identity has reorganized around autonomy. Identity preservation is powerful. Once you see yourself as the one who doesn't need anyone, your brain protects that narrative. Research from social neuroscience shows that chronic loneliness activates the same neural pathways as physical pain. The anterior cingulate cortex doesn't sharply distinguish between social rejection and bodily injury. Over time, to avoid that pain, your system becomes anticipatory. It dampens desire before it can be disappointed. You stop reaching so you can't be excluded. But there's a deeper layer. When you go years without close friends, your mirror neurons receive less emotional data. Fewer shared experiences mean fewer corrective feedback loops. You don't get challenged in subtle ways. No one reflects back blind spots. No one notices micro shifts in your mood. You become accurate about your own internal world, but slightly distorted about how others experience you. It's like living in a house with perfectly sealed windows. You control the temperature. No drafts, no sudden storms. But the air grows stale. You don't notice at first because stability feels safe. The metaphor matters. Your psyche prioritizes safety over vitality every time. And safety has rewards. You don't deal with betrayal. You don't negotiate social politics. You don't have to explain your quirks. Your routines are uninterrupted. There is a calm efficiency to it. That calm becomes addictive. Cortisol stays lower when unpredictability stays lower. The brain loves that. But the absence of friction also means the absence of expansion. At some point, you stop imagining deep friendship as something accessible, not because you consciously gave up, but because your predictive brain adjusted its expectations. Expectation management is one of the mind's strongest defense strategies. If you don't anticipate closeness, you can't miss it. Here's the part that challenges your self-perception. You may believe you are emotionally independent. In reality, you may be emotionally underexposed. There's a difference. Independence is the ability to connect without losing yourself. Underexposure is the absence of situations that test your capacity to connect. When someone gets close now, your system reads it as a variable. Variables introduce uncertainty. Uncertainty activates micro-threat responses, slight withdrawal, subtle sarcasm, busyness. You don't label it fear, you call it preference. Around this point, most people assume the story is simple. Fewer friends equals fewer problems. But around 70% into this pattern, the cost begins to surface. Without close friends, your identity becomes less socially negotiated. You solidify. That sounds stable. It can also mean rigidity. No one gently pushes back on your narratives. No one challenges your interpretations in real time. Cognitive flexibility decreases in subtle ways. Your worldview tightens. And emotionally, something else happens. Without consistent co-regulation, stress accumulates privately. You process alone. You celebrate alone. You grieve alone. The nervous system is remarkably adaptive, but it was never designed to metabolize everything in isolation. Over years, that self-containment can convert into low-grade numbness. Not dramatic depression, just a muted emotional range. The hidden downside is this. The very mechanism protecting you from rejection may be quietly shrinking your capacity for joy. Deep connection amplifies positive emotion as much as it risks negative emotion. When you reduce one, you often reduce both. You might say you're fine, and in many ways you are. Functional, stable, self-sufficient. But ask yourself a sharper question. When was the last time someone saw you unfiltered and stayed? When was the last time you allowed that possibility? Because beneath the adaptation, the social circuitry hasn't disappeared, it's dormant. Neuroplasticity doesn't erase pathways, it weakens unused ones. With deliberate exposure, those circuits can strengthen again. The discomfort you feel around closeness isn't proof you're incapable, it's proof you're out of practice. Reframing this matters. Years without close friends didn't break you, they shaped you. They trained you to survive in low-connection environments. Survival strategies are intelligent, but they are not destiny. The real shift begins when you recognize that your isolation isn't a personality trait, it's a learned regulation pattern, and learned patterns can be updated. You don't need to transform into a hypersocial extrovert. You don't need dozens of connections. What changes everything is allowing small, repeated moments of safe exposure, letting someone know something real, staying in a conversation 10 minutes longer than feels uncomfortable, noticing the impulse to withdraw and pausing before acting on it. This isn't about chasing friendship, it's about recalibrating your nervous system to tolerate closeness again. If any part of this felt uncomfortably accurate, that's not coincidence. It means the mirror worked. Awareness is not dramatic, it's precise, and precision is where change begins. You adapted for protection. Now you get to decide whether that protection still serves you.